You are listening to Verba Managed, where words do remain. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear SPs. We're the Cultured Carrots serving up diversity on a plate. Welcome to the second episode of a new series that will accompany you along all the weeks of March. A series that embraces the concept of cultural diversity and opinion. We bring together people from all over the world, from cultures that seemingly have nothing in common, and examine the similarities and differences in viewpoints on personal issues. Come join us for this journey through the melting pot of Earth. For the second episode, we'll focus on the broad notion of death, a notion that concerns everyone without exception, that might seem scary to some, a relief to others, or just an inevitable fact of life to some people. But what do people truly think about this concept? What are people's visions, traditions, or taboos concerning this topic? Will contrasting opinions on this issue inform us about our cultures and about our vision of life in general? We're delighted to welcome today Kaya and Martine to hear their very own definition of success. First of all, could you tell us more about yourselves, your origins and backgrounds? Martine, can you start us off? Where do you come from? What's your background? And so on.
Okay, so my name is Martine Mavungu. I come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I come from the Congolese tribe named the Bashi, both from my father and mother's side. Although I am Congolese, I've barely spent time in the country, therefore I don't really have very strong roots. So I kind of represent this new generation that doesn't really fit in one single place, yet still tries to identify with what the world is trying to portray upon me.
It's very distinct and very unique cultural perspectives that you've got.
Exactly.
How about you, Kaya?
I grew up in Warsaw, Poland. I was born there and I grew up there.
That's really interesting. So, could you tell us what?
It's so bad because you come up with like this interesting stuff and I'm like, I grew up here.
Thanks a lot. Could you tell us a little bit about what death signifies on a personal as well as cultural level?
I would say that I was introduced to the concept of death rather early, but I never really had like a concrete discussion with my parents. It was kind of like someone died and that was it, and no one really bothered to explain to me what was going on. But as I grew up, I kind of discovered what death was and kind of made my own perception around it. And personally, I would say that death is not exactly an end for me. It's more of you die obviously on the physical level, but the memories that you made on Earth, people that you met, the experiences that you shared with other people would live on, and in some cases you would actually leave a piece of your DNA, children and everything. And through that, I kind of see as death being just the next step in life. Just that you're no longer with the people on Earth, but your history and your life remains with them and kind of like guide them. On a cultural level, from a Congolese point of view, death is, it's a very much European perception, most notably thanks to Christianity and colonization and everything. But if we were to go back in time, at least from what my grandmother told me, death was never seen as an end, because when you died, you would become an ancestor that was meant to guide the people around you. Of course, depending on the conditions in which you died, you could either become an evil ancestor or a benevolent one. And I found that very interesting, because people never really died. There was no conception of hell or heaven. You just kind of stayed with people, and depending on the conditions in which you died, it kind of like kind of characterized you in the afterlife.
So that kind of includes a very interesting sort of description of how perceptions of death vary as well in your culture.
Right.
Yeah, for me, I would say that my personal perspective is quite different than the usual one in my country, because Poland is a very Catholic, very Christian country. So obviously the version of afterlife where you go to heaven or to hell. And I feel like, especially because I grew up in Warsaw, which is the capital, and it's there are big differences between my city and, for example, the rural areas, which are still very traditional. So the notion of afterlife and that you live your life to get to heaven and to live your, you live forever in the afterlife is very important, I would say. And for me personally, of course, I grew up in the Christian culture. I never went to church, and I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in the afterlife. So I would say that there is a big difference between my personal opinion and what a typical Polish person would say.
So we've talked about the concept of the afterlife quite a bit. So what is your relationship like with your ancestors? How do you honour, celebrate, or mourn the dead? So now we've touched on the concept of the afterlife. Could we sort of talk about our relationship with the dead? How do you honour, celebrate, or mourn them?
I think that it's quite important in Poland, because we have during the All Saints Day is a state holiday. So, and it's usually connected to the weekend. So we have free days, which we like on the 1st of November. Like the whole Poland goes to cemeteries and we honor our dead loved ones. And usually then families meet up for like an official dinner or a lunch. So I guess that is the most obvious sign of honoring the ancestors.
At least from where I come from, we don't really have specific ceremonies or memorial to mourn the dead or remember their memories. I mean, from the moment the person dies, it becomes something very personal, because I've noticed that at every at the anniversary of my grandmother's death, there's nothing really special that is organized for her memory. It's something that's very much confined to each person's bedroom, where you kind of just sit down and think about them, and which I really found really interesting, because afterwards everyone just everyone just gathers around the table, and they share their most loved memory of the person, and that's it. There's nothing much to it. It's like you're supposed to express your loss and your sadness when the person dies during the funeral, but after that you're no longer supposed to cry or mourn them in such a way. You're only supposed to celebrate their life and recount all their memories and the stories that they left behind. It's no longer about crying.
Those are very contrasting sort of approaches to remembrance and mourning the dead.
I think that especially because of course it differs from family to family, but in general, people, for example, if the dead one, it's the birthday of the dead person, or like a special date, for example, anniversary of marriage or something like that, people usually do go to cemetery with flowers to celebrate the day kind of with this person.
So let's end this discussion on a rather more touchy subject, that of suicide. How do communities you've lived in view it, and how do you feel personally about the perception of suicide?
It's looked down upon in my community. You're not supposed to kill yourself, because it's like you don't own your life. You're not supposed to take it yourself. And there's this, it's a very stereotypical way of viewing death, that is considering how black people in general are supposed to deal with death. In Congo, it's black people do not kill themselves, like you can't do that, it's not okay. And I find that very reducive, especially when it comes to considering the other person's feelings and what the person is actually going through. Because most of the time when we hear about a person who, for example, hung themselves in Congo, everyone just disregards the person. There's no trying to identify with what he was going through, or trying to understand if the person was actually in a good mental situation. It was just, well, that was a stupid thing to do. Why would he do that? Did he not love life? But there's no trying to actually understand what the person goes through. And I've always had trouble understanding why people viewed suicide that way. So whenever that conversation comes up in the family, I usually just go away because I'll just end up getting upset over what people will end up saying.
Yeah, I think that in Poland, like, again, religion plays a big role because, you know, you aren't supposed to commit suicide because, like, only God can decide about your life and death. And I think that's actually, I think that's for many religious people that is the perspective. Again, just because I wasn't raised as a religious person, so my personal perspective is quite different, but I think that it may prevail in a big part of the population.
Those are really interesting, but also sort of you can see so definitely commonalities in how your separate respective communities view suicide and also death in general as well. So a massive thank you to both of you, Kaya and Martine, for a very interesting discussion of a very personal notion of death. And I'm sure it's given our audience an indication of how diverse perspectives on this universal topic can be. And a massive thank you, listeners, for tuning in. This was brought to you by Cultured Carrots of the Verb Minute podcast. Tune in next Monday for more episodes on multiculturalism. Thanks to the writer of this episode, Miranda, and to the producer, Maureen. I'm Mason, and see you next week for another episode of Cultured Carrots. Until next time, take care.